Going live. We're live.
Excellent.
Yay.
Hi, everybody.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Asa Torvaldsdottir. This is...
Hi, I'm Keen DeLacy. And we're going to do heraldry and stuff.
Shenanigans and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a few things on our agenda to talk about. But if you'd like to ask questions, please ask them in the chat and we will get to you. We will take heraldic submissions. Mm-hmm. We will take questions. Heraldic related is preferred.
Yes.
Since it is a heraldry themed show.
Yeah, consultation questions, things like that.
I know we did have at least one question online. First, there's no way to say who's on this thing, is there?
No.
Because Rev asked a question, but I don't know if he's actually on the chat. So, no.
Rev, if you're there, say something.
Well, if he shows up later, everyone tell him there were cookies and he missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Okay. So, we allegedly have some people watching. So I guess we'll just get started.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we wanted to talk about canting.
Yes.
Can you define cant?
A cant is basically a visual pun with your armory on your name.
And I've got some examples. I did a very quick look at the list of charges, which is available on the Ordinary and Armorial. And then I did a real quick search of Family Search, which is a database of 16th century and later names for things that matched. So this is just a very quick late period English possible cant. For example, Anchor is a perfectly good last name. There was an Alexander Anchor in 1587. Anvil, not quite in that spelling, but there's Anvell, which is close enough.
It is close enough because it's the sound that matters when you're canting.
And there's combinations like Whiteheart is one that I know that there is at least one set of canting arms registered. Just a white heart, which is a deer. There's armor, there's arrow, there's bee, moth, axe, barrel, basket, ram, which you could use for the animal or for a battering ram.
That's very true.
Battering ram is a totally legitimate heraldic charge. Beacon, badger, bat, bear, boar, bull, camel. Did you know camel was a English last name?
I did not.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was pretty surprised. Margaret Camel, 1595. I have to say that I think my favorite thing that I ran across while I was looking for these was there's an awful lot of canting names for various kinds of dogs. Talbot is a classic medieval name for a dog. There's also Kennet, which is not a late period last name. It's listed in Bruce's Mistholm site in a 1285 citation.
Oh, nice.
And apparently fell out of favor by late period, so it does not appear in Family Search, which is interesting. But and there's also like a Thomas Hound, which is good. But my favorite was Andro Dog. Dog. And there were a whole lot of listings for dog, but they were all from Scotland, and almost all of them were from Perth, Scotland. So apparently there was just one family in Scotland whose name was Dog.
That's fantastic.
And then there's also a whole bunch of fox-related ones I didn't bother looking up because I know they're there. Fox itself, plus Todd, T-O-D, is another name for a fox.
Another name for a fox.
And of course, you don't have to go English. There's also renard, which is French fox illusion, and lots of other things. So canting is fun and It's totally period. There's an
Yes.
awful lot of canting arms in the historical record. It appears to be something that they enjoyed doing historically, which is cool.
Yeah. Things like I think the Lucy family has a fish that is called a luce.
Right.
I think I've seen, though I'd have to double check it, a family called Warden having a pear tree, because one of the medieval English words for pear was warden.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Super neat.
Thank you, Constantia.
Oh, yeah.
There's Pavonis, an Italian name with a peacock pavonating.
Which is that's when it spreads out and looks all fancy. I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, that's in its pride. I think pavonating is when it's got its tail trailing behind it.
Oh, okay. Cool. There's also some historical SCA connotations for canting. The early heraldic letters can be pretty fun. Oh, of course, pavon, walking from yes, of course. The Italian dancing, I should know that. But anyway, SCA historical, the College of Heralds started in the early 70s, I believe.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten the names of the people involved, but there were a few of the early SCA people who decided that we all needed heraldry and started the College of Heralds.
Yay!
And they were much less organized then, but they were funny. And the letters of registration from that period are available. And there's one of them which has commentary, and I should have looked it up so that I could read the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, in regard to the scurrilous rumor that heralds are forced to pun, it's completely untrue. Heralds don't pun, they can't. Which is just such a wonderful pun.
It really is. So, shall we have a look at some, do we have any visual examples of of arms for canting?
I should have prepared those, and I didn't.
Aha.
But I bet I can find some relatively quickly. Just a moment. That's my problem. Leaves, apparently a section of armorial where canting is prevalent. Let me see. There's a family called Yew, Y-U-E, who had yew leaves.
Hesselrig
had hazel leaves. Malherbe had nettle leaves. I presume that's what I presume it means nettle.
That's pretty literally bad plant, bad herb.
That's fantastic. Nettle is in fact a bad plant. It's really terrible. So what I'm looking at right now is mistholm.com, which is Bruce Draconarius of Mistholm's Pictorial Dictionary of Heraldry.
Which is amazing.
It's an incredible resource, and we are all indebted to Bruce for putting it online after much badgering over many years. Sorry, Bruce. It lists a lot of different period charges, not all of them, because even that can't be exhaustive. There's just so many. Although he updates it when he can. And then commentary about when they were found, what they looked like, that sort of thing. So I'm not seeing lists of the actual arms to show, which I suppose that I could
I mean, if you can pull something up on your phone, we can hold it up to the camera, since we would print stuff out, but we only have a black and white printer, and while we have markers, we are also kind of lazy.
Neat. A camel is a period charge.
Oh, cool.
Neat. It's a kind of a strip of leather with dags of chain hanging off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really neat. And apparently, George, Duke of Clarence from the 15th century, had a camel on his device, possibly as a Canton Gorget. George Gorget.
George. Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the King of the East has a badge, a camel argent. That's cool. So I suppose I could look on my phone and see if I can find the arms of George, Duke of Clarence. Are you getting any questions on the feed here?
Nope, just a couple of comments.
Okay. George Plantagenet, first Duke of Clarence. Brother of Edward IV and Richard III.
Huh.
Interesting. Died in the Tower of London. What a surprise.
How
That's
shocking.
Just completely unexpected.
You know, you hear that as a cause of death. Cause of death, Tower of London.
Okay. I am not seeing his arms handy.
That's a pity.
It is. That's okay. All right. Let's see what else we've got. Let's see.
Oh, fish.
Yeah,
like
let's
we were
look
talking
at
about
fish.
earlier.
You brought that up.
I did.
You're all smart and you know things.
I mean, 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
So as with leaves, the type of fish was frequently chosen for the cant, as in the arms of herring, hake,
de la roche. A roach is a type of fish.
And the Graf's von salmon. Salmen, but whatever. So that's cool. That's the only place on that page. So yeah, apparently if you're looking at a period armorial and it has a fish or a leaf and you want to know what kind it is, you should look at the name.
Look at the name of the family, and there's a pretty good chance it'll tell you what kind of fish or leaf that is.
Period armorials usually don't have blazons, which means it can be pretty hard sometimes to tell what that thing is drawn on the device.
Oh yeah, it's pretty great. So Constantia has found the last name Sheaves on Family Search.
Okay.
And a sheaf
is a group
bundle or bunch.
Yes, a bundle or bunch. You can have a sheaf of wheat, I believe. Although it's called a garb.
That's called a garb of wheat.
Yes.
But you can have a sheaf of, I think it's commonly seen as arrows.
That's right. In which case it's 3, I believe.
1 vertical and then 1 on each of the diagonals.
Correct.
Is a sheaf of arrows. So if you wanted sheaves, you could have multiple sheaves of arrows. Hey!
I like it. 3 sheaves of arrows would be a lovely, historically accurate device.
Yeah. And most excellent for a surname of Sheaves.
Let's see. Apparently bowls have canting. I believe I mentioned Bowl as an English last name.
Yes, I believe you did, as well as Bohr.
Yes. Michael Bowl, Mykahell, Michael.
Huh.
Bowl from 1573.
I love medieval spelling.
I also found a William, Wylllyam. Right? It's great. Let's see.
What other sorts of things you can't? Deer, heart, especially anything that's a color, heart,
I know we have a number of those.
Heart.
Yep.
Um,
We have at least 2 white hearts in the SCA that I am aware of.
Yep. So a heart being a deer. Black heart, you can have a black deer. Another fun one that involves hearts is Hartford.
Hartford, yes.
So you have a deer, which is a
yes,
heart,
I've seen
and
this.
then in base you have a ford, which is a specific heraldic charge.
It's a circle with...
No, that's a well. Or no.
Oh, you're right. The ford is the base.
The ford is the base.
The ford's the base. Yeah, and it's barry, wavy, azure, and argent.
Yep.
Blue and white, alternating wavy stripes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The circle version is a fountain.
Right. Of course it is. I knew that.
Which would be great for Fontaine.
Yes, I'm quite sure that they had that association. Apparently, you can call a dragon a worm, W-Y-R-M, if it's canting. That's actually a thing that I've seen in SCA registration sometimes. If the submitter wants a term that is slightly non-standard, they can sometimes have it for the sake of the cant.
Yes, they can. Because unless it actually violates a rule, no one's going to tell them they can't. We're so funny.
Oh, we're awful. I don't know about Cordonoui's Ring of Boar's Heads, Constantia, but I will look it up. I know that Cordonouis is Kansas, if I remember correctly. The heart of boredom.
Oh, it's a ring of boar's heads?
It's boar ring. Of course it is.
Oh, thank you. That does my terrible, terrible heraldic heart good to hear.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. Cordonouis is in Des Moines, Iowa. I was wrong about where it is. It's part of Calontir. Yes, their device is Argent, a laurel wreath within an orle of boar's heads.
That's not an orle. It doesn't follow the edge of the shield. That's
Amulet.
Boar's heads.
Amulet of boar's heads cooped. Ghouls. Yeah, that's fantastic. A boar ring. That's so good.
Alec Edgeworth wants to know what our favorite all-time heraldry of a phoenix is.
Interesting. What an interesting question. Well, I suppose first, let me look at what's out there with phoenixes. That makes me wish I had come up with a phoenix device for the second part of our talk today, but I did not.
Alas.
Under Monster Phoenix in the Ordinary and Armorial. So let's see what's out there.
I mean, you can also just check the index.
I suppose I could. That would require opening another tab, and I have enough tabs open on this thing.
That's true. There are 389 devices with
one primary phoenix. So that's excluding secondary and tertiary phoenixes and multiple phoenixes. And this is a good point for me to say that later in the program, we'll be talking about why you shouldn't worry about wanting something that there are already 389 of, because we can still find room to have simple armory with common devices. But that's later. Stay tuned. Phoenix atop a rose. That's cool.
Ooh.
I am disappointed that his name is Ironstone and he doesn't have anything referencing iron or stone, though.
That's a badge.
It is a badge. Maybe his main device has iron or stone. It does not.
Nope.
No. So I believe that an iron, like a clothes iron, is actually a period charge, if I remember correctly.
I would be unsurprised to find that the case.
Phoenix phoenix carrying an iron.
So there's all kinds of great phoenixes out there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, someone got Fieldless a
Ooh.
Phoenix Sable in 2017. Good for them.
I like this one. Fieldless, a phoenix within and conjoined to a massel ore.
Oh yeah, that would
'Cause
probably look really neat.
I think maskels and lozenges and all of those are pretty neat.
Yeah.
And there's a number of variations on the lozenge, which is the solid version. The maskel is the hollow version. The rooster, RUSTRE.
Oh, that's right.
Is a lozenge with a circular hole.
Right.
And then there's a couple of other solid lozenge variations that have things on the tips of the diamond. Thank you, Bruce.
The Barony of Sacred Stone has multiple Phoenix-related devices that are all double-headed phoenixes.
Ooh, fancy.
Originally registered in 1982 in Atlantia.
Uh-huh.
So that's neat.
Yeah, and we have at least one person with a phoenix on their armory here in the West. And that is a phoenix close with the wings.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's
all folded in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is good heavens, I'm blanking on his SCA name.
My memory is terrible, so
Corwin.
I can't help you here. Oh, of course it is. I remember Corwin's device. Let's see. I bet I can pull up some on Oscar and actually have pictures to go with what we're talking about.
What?
Assuming that I can enter my password correctly.
Well, I mean, that's an assumption.
So for those of you who don't know, Oscar is the commenting system for SCA Heraldry. And if you want to comment on submissions, contact your Kingdom Herald, I believe, to get permission to go on and have your say. That's really the only qualification is getting permission from your Kingdom Herald and wanting to do so.
Yep.
And don't be a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that one would hope that went without saying, but
one would hope.
One would hope.
Let's see. What kind of Phoenix submissions have we had recently? Wow. Someone got an augmentation on their device that already had a Phoenix on it, and boy, is that a blazon.
Wow.
Per chevron, azure, and sable, a Phoenix ore rising from flames proper, issuant from the line of division, and a rose argent, and for augmentation on a canton vert, a key inverted, and a stick hobby horse in saltire, within a border embattled ore. That is a lot. That is a lot. Oh, Adeline Eidsborn, that's Christian Goldenlocks lady, has procured 2 pallets argent, overall a Phoenix ore, and chief a cross fleury argent. So that's cool. I haven't actually met her, but I've met Christian, who's a cool dude.
Oh, here's a fun one. Vert impale a Phoenix argent issuant from a drinking horn ore.
Oh, I like it.
It's 2014.
And if you're wondering what the device that I just read out looks like, it looks like this. Flip over the camera so I can see if I am... Oh, let's try... Ooh, that's not great.
But hey, this is why contrast is important.
A lot of glare, and I don't think I can fix it. That's unfortunate.
So the Phoenix is yellow, and all of the other pale bits are white. And the background is blue.
Oh, getting some color. There we go. Yeah, they're... yeah, I think that's a pretty neat looking device.
It is.
All right. Is Cold Keep near Phoenix, Arizona? Is that what's going on? I don't actually know where Cold Keep is.
Neither do I.
So Alec asks if that's the record for a blazon's number of syllables, and I have to say probably not.
There are some things that are very complicated and very specifically blazoned. The blazon on a regular computer screen will sometimes be a couple lines long.
And there are some interesting things associated with length of blazon. I know that for some heralds, it's a badge of honor to have a short blazon. I believe there in the World Heraldic Symposium had badge stickers for like 4-word blazons or something, which there are a few people that have. When I design a device, I prefer to have less than 10 words. That's my personal goal for simplicity is if it has less than 10 words, it's probably not that complicated.
Okay. Cold Keep is Prince George, British Columbia, the third most northern shire in Ontario.
Well, nice. Welcome.
Constantia has a badge that is Fieldless a Seraph proper and uses all the colors. I believe that's because a seraph's wings are, when proper, are rainbow colored.
That sounds right.
Constantia, is that correct?
I can look it up on
Mistholm. It's probably under Angel.
Probably. Yeah. But it's faster to guess at the URL because for some reason Mistholm's search function is very slow. Oh, it's not under Angel either.
You can look at type. Humanoid monsters. There we go.
All right. So,
and
standing seraph has 6 wings, 2 with tips up, 2 with tips down, and 2 covering the body. Staying in front of you by default. I am not seeing default tinctures.
Okay. But Transparent Dreaming, sorry, don't know your SCA name, points out that Master Iago has a 3-word blazon.
Nice.
Ermine, Fretty Ghouls.
Nice. That's fantastic.
That is sexy. Also, Ermine Fretty Ghouls is just very
I bet that looks really neat. Yeah.
I think he's the guy that does the 3 Things Thursday.
That sounds right. Let's see. What was I looking up? Yes, phoenixes. Number of syllables. There's a joke in a song about that device that was registered for the Principal Herald long ago. That one's very long, isn't it? Is it still actually registered?
Oh, geez. The seal of the Vesper Principal Herald?
Is that what it was?
It might be. And that one's tinctureless.
Let's see. None of that is what I want. That's what I want.
Yes, Constantia, I agree with you. Tinctureless badges are weird. They also take up a lot of space in terms of conflict. So
yes,
I don't believe they're allowed anymore, or at least not unless under very specific circumstances.
I believe they are not normally allowed anymore. I think the most recent registrations have been protecting real world arms, which we don't do a whole lot anymore, but sometimes we do. So the Herald seal for the Vesper Principal Herald, which is the West Kingdom Herald, registered in August of 79, is tinctureless, a quarter sun saltire-wise, illuminated in chief, surrounded by a crown scepter pale-wise, between 2 bats displayed, grasping a scroll folded nebulae-wise, to base, inscribed Semper Literis Mandate. Overall, 2 straight trumpets in Saltire.
Mandate. But
Oh, you're right,
Yeah.
Mandate. You are correct. Of course.
it's
It's a lot.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not the one I was thinking of. I know there's a longer one.
But yes, Herald Seals and Society Award badges, such as the
and what tinctureless means, for those who don't know already, is where fieldless means you can put a specifically described thing onto a field of any kind. Tinctureless means that both the field and the things on it can be any combination of tinctures.
Yep.
Which is why it takes up so much space.
Yep.
And by takes up so much space, I mean that a lot more things will conflict against it than if it were not tinctureless.
Because it conflicts against every tincture, because it can be any tincture.
Yep. All right. So, Alec, I recommend, if you want to do devices that are complex, that you should look at some of the existing armories, especially the Italian ones, because there are some really interesting Italian armorials out there.
Yeah, some of the late period English stuff, I think, gets pretty interesting as well.
It does, yes. And I had the link at some point. Nothing's wrong with Italy, Constantia, except their heraldry and a lot of other things.
Nothing is wrong with Italy. Their heraldry is fine.
If you want a list of things that are wrong with Italy, go read The Courtier, written by an Italian who lists an awful lot of things that are wrong with Italy.
That's fair.
Yes, the one that I remember most actually from The Courtier, which I haven't read in 20 years, is there was a whole like half page devoted to how much the Italian knights suck, especially because they don't know how to grapple, which was, of course, it stuck out to me because we don't do any grappling in the SCA.
Right, Constantia is Byzantine. I don't blame you for the permanent grudge against Venice.
And you should still be mad about the Fourth Crusade. I don't remember which one the Fourth Crusade is, but you should be mad about all of them because they were all terrible. Do you remember where to find? Does the Viking Answer Lady have the list of armorials?
No, it's Yehuda. If you look up Yehuda heraldry, you'll find it. I don't remember what the actual site name is. It is, in fact, yehudaheraldry.com.
So let me just paste this into chat. And this is oh yes, the shopping. That's the one where they got bored on the way to the Holy Land and sacked Constantinople instead. That's honestly not an inaccurate description of what happened. So yes, if you want to spend a lot of time looking at period heraldry, there is a partial list of what's available, and you can look at some of the things that they did in period, some of which were very simple, and some of which were very complex,
and some of which were very strange.
Yes. Let's see. Alex says, got a new device also that's interesting. Ghouls, a raccoon, rampant, argent, marked sable, and chief 3 Roman helmets. Or interesting.
Interesting.
I wonder what our current status for raccoons is. They're a New World animal.
I think that's just a step in period practice.
Usually. Doesn't look like Bruce has anything specific on them. So let me check in Oscar. Did I get 3 O's into that? I think I did.
Yeah, probably. Raccoon!
Raccoons don't howl. What are you doing? So let's see. We've had several submissions of raccoons recently. Here's a 2018 one. Let's look at this. That is an adorable raccoon, I have to say.
That is super cute. And it's on the December 2018 LOAR.
And let's see what they said about it. It was accepted. There is a step from period practice for the use of a New World raccoon, which is exactly what we thought, but it's always good to check.
Always check.
And the deal with steps from period practice is you are allowed one. So you can have a raccoon on your device, or you can have a pineapple on your device, but you can't have both.
I was going to say trillium, but...
Yes. I was just thinking about pineapples recently. And of course, I have not fact-checked that a pineapple is a step from period practice, but I presume it is since it's South American. I could, of course, look it up, but I think I'm not going to right now. So let's look. Yes, step from period practice. A raccoon rampant argent marked sable in chief 3 Roman helmets or. Now, the thing that I was just looking at, which was on this tab way over here, yes, it specifies argent marked sable.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and mostly white. The mask and the rings on the tail are black. Everything else is white.
And would you expect that to count for conflict?
The markings?
Usually not.
Usually not, and it is less than half of the critter.
Which is the usual standard for whether a tincture change matters. I wonder what it conflicts against. Let's see. We have a precedent for raccoons placed on sable and other low contrast fields where there are no delineations between the sable markings of the beast and the field, which, as long as it's still identifiable, that seems reasonable. It looks like it'll conflict against badgers and similar animals, which makes sense.
Yep. But not mushrooms.
No. Rose's Heraldry says, my roommates are screaming about Eurocentrism. So, yes and no. The SCA's heraldic system of language is rooted in 14th century, 15th century?
Yeah, Anglo-Norman.
14th, 15th century Anglo-Norman. When the early SCA people decided to put together the heraldic rules, they decided to base it on a time when heraldry was still being used for battlefield identification. And therefore,
so it might be 13th, 14th century.
I think 14th century is what they were going for. Because even by late period English, you get much more complicated things that are not terribly recognizable across the battlefield. And the standard for heraldry should be that you can look across the battlefield and say, that's Linnet of Beaumaris.
Glomeris.
Either way. Anyway. So from the 70s through fairly recently, that was really the what we call the core style of the SCA. And we have for a long time allowed variation outside the core style with documentation. We have allowed Japanese Mon for a long, long time. And then the problem is figuring out how to make that system fit within the language that we are using for our SCA databases. And the most recent set of rules, which came in the late 2000s, mid 2000s?
Sena is, I think that may have been early 10s.
I'm not sure.
Because I think I was already, it might have,
it could be
general vicinity of 2012, I think.
Okay, so somewhere in the vicinity of a decade ago, the new system made a lot more allowances for things that are not Eurocentric. There's a whole procedure for providing documentation that the thing that you want is that otherwise violates the core rules is still heraldic and documentable. And then as long as we can figure out a way to describe it in our rules, we will totally allow it. So the rules are still Eurocentric to a degree, but it's kind of an unavoidable historical artifact because of the language that we use needs to be backward compatible.
Yeah.
Can you imagine trying to reblazon all of the devices in the SCA into some other style?
Oh, good Lord.
That would be an incredible project. So I am totally for allowing things that are non-Western European. I have helped with documentation on some of those. It can be really tricky.
Yeah, and it does unfortunately put up a barrier of being more work.
Yes, documentation. Some of the documentation's already been done. Simple things like we have the rule of contrast, where you can't have a color on a color, but the Germans and the Italians and some other people, even the English sometimes, did that. And we have documentation already set up for if you want a German device with black on red or red on black, we have parameters for what kinds of things you can do that with. We also have some documentation about Japanese Mon. I know that we've gotten Mongol in, and the problem there is that the Mongols didn't have heraldry the way that we think of it, and of course neither did the Vikings.
Yep.
So that's been a long-standing problem for the SCA. I mean,
not all cultures that we cover did heraldry the way we think of it. So the solution for a lot of that is to... Yeah, it gets tricky, and I'm sure there's more work we can do towards inclusivity in that regard.
A big barrier is simply access to documentation, because even though we would really like to be able to add more things into the system to make it more inclusive, getting firm documentation on what this thing is, how it was used, how it was drawn.
Getting a standardized version of it.
Right.
So that everybody knows when you see this word, what does it look like?
Alec mentions Celts had some beautiful, quote, heraldry. And that's true. They did have a lot of things that are beautifully visual motifs that are not heraldry, but were sometimes used for identification, but not very often. Usually they were just decoration. And the question then is, if you tell somebody that this device has a Celtic dragon in it, what does that mean? What does it look like? So if we could figure out what a standardized thing is, so that we can write in a glossary somewhere how to reproduce that for the scribes that are going to make a scroll for that person.
And they're going to be working from the words, not the original picture most of the time.
Right. It's a lot easier now. We have much easier access to pictures now. So that problem's not as bad as it used to be.
And the archivist is awesome and will generally get you stuff pretty quick if you ask her for it.
And we're still, not all scribes know that's a service that's available.
That is true.
So we're still working on that. So I guess the end answer there is we would dearly love to be more inclusive, and we are trying very hard. I know that Snifero has been doing huge amounts of work getting more Egyptian resources.
Yes.
Which is fantastic in multiple eras, right?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much their project right now.
I think they started with medieval equivalent Egypt, and have been going further back. And the problem is really just documentation. And some things there is documentation, we just don't have anyone that has access to it or can read it. Like, I know there's tons of stuff from India.
Right. We
don't have anyone who's doing that work. You'd have to have someone who's able to read the languages there, and there are hundreds of languages there.
Yeah, and can get access to the documents, which may or may not be digitized at this point.
That's another thing, is that link that I posted earlier of those armorials. Those have only been digitized within the last 10 years.
Yeah.
When I started in the SCA 23 years ago, we did not have access to those. If you were lucky, you would have access to a university library that had maybe an armorial or two.
An armorial, if you were lucky.
If you were lucky. More likely, you'd just have access to late period or post period books about heraldry, which may or may not be accurate. Yes, Fox Davies. Yeah. And then like Africa, we've got nothing for documentation for Africa.
Well, for sub-Saharan Africa.
For sub-Saharan Africa, you are correct. I apologize. I mean, I know that Ethiopia has had a thriving culture for a damn long time. Their fun fact, Ethiopia, the only African nation to beat up a European nation in war. They beat on the Italians.
I'm sure the Italians had it coming.
Oh, they did. It was like pretty much the only victory for the Italians in the colonial period. But that's way after our focus. Yes, vanishingly rare documentation on Latin America. The Americas in general, very unfortunately, pretty much all that we've got is post-European contact, mostly written by the Europeans, who almost never knew what the hell they were looking at. It's a real problem for names in Mexico. I know I looked at documentation for that. All the names we've got written down are people that were interacting with the Catholic Church in ways that altered the names they were using.
Yeah.
Which is irritating.
Yeah, Is
there some stuff maybe not digitized yet that is?
I don't think so. They just weren't keeping records that we have access to or that survived.
Or the survival of records is a big thing, especially in areas that were conquered.
Yeah, the Europeans were often into destroying everything native that they came across. And a lot of it's just lost to us.
Which is very frustrating if that is the direction that you want to go. It's going to be harder, and that sucks. Yeah.
Constantia is correct. There is virtually nothing on Australasia or the Pacific Islands. They didn't really keep written records to speak of. It just wasn't part of their culture. It wasn't necessary for what they were doing. It doesn't mean they didn't have a vibrant culture. They absolutely had a vibrant culture. But because of the nature of the heraldic work that we're doing, we require documentation. And that is deeply frustrating at times.
Yes.
Alec, I am not sure about South Africa documentation. I would have to look at how early our records go. I know that Europe had contact with Africa very far back, but you run into a Marco Polo problem where if you've ever looked at how Marco Polo described his travels, and we also have other records for what was going on in those areas at the time that are much more reliable. And Marco Polo was frequently full of shit. So there's a very serious reliability problem for descriptions written by Europeans about other places. I mean, even
speaking of Eurocentrism.
Yeah. Even very obvious things like the English writing about the Irish. They were right next door. And a lot of the stuff that they wrote was complete bullshit. Alec, what do you mean by natives? Natives of America? In that case, I am not aware that they used heraldry, but I don't know. I would have to look at what resources are available to us.
There are a lot of different cultural
groups. There's hundreds of different cultural groups.
Even
I know,
just in North America, not to mention Central and Southern.
Yeah, for the North America cultures that I'm familiar with, which is only a couple, I am not aware that they used heraldry the way that
The
we are
way that-
talking about.
Mhm.
They certainly had lots of very neat artistic motifs that you might be able to incorporate with documentation.
Mhm. But in terms of things that say, I am this person, I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know, and I'm not sure that there is much surviving documentation, as Constantia says.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very real problem for heraldic research and all the other kinds of research that we would love to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is just a matter of surviving documentation. And hey, we're almost out of time, which means I'm going to switch subject from things that are depressing to things that aren't. The other part of what I wanted to talk about today was especially when I started, but even recently, I have heard people say things like, I want a dragon. And the herald will say, oh, dragons. There's so many dragons already.
That doesn't mean you can't have a dragon.
And you don't have to resort to things like slapping a border on it, which is a very typical SCA thing and not a very historical thing to do. So I went and looked up a couple of available devices in common categories. Here's a dragon. This is ghouls. A dragon, do they default to rampant? Or do you have to
No,
specify?
I think they default to Staten.
Okay. So a dragon rampant, per pale, counter ermine, and ermine. And that, as far as I can tell, clears conflict. It's super simple. It's elegant. It's
attractive as fuck.
It's questionably historical, simply because counter ermine was very rare. But that's just a single dragon on a plain field. Just divide the dragon, and there you go.
Yeah. Are you willing to have a multicolored critter? If yes, a lot of stuff opens up.
And running with that theme, I looked under wolves. There's tons of wolves. So here's a wolf that's available. That's Purpure, a wolf rampant.
Bari, Argent, and Ghouls.
Yes, that's that. I think it looks really cool. It looks a little bit azure on that screen, unfortunately. I swear it's Purpure.
That is a common problem with Purpure.
It is. And Purpure also very rare in period heraldry.
Yeah, I think the rarest of the tinctures that we use in the SCA, second to green, and then green is the second most.
So let me show one more thing, and then I will talk about that. Because then I looked up lions, and I had a little bit of fun with lions, and I came up with this. Oh, come on, show up.
So that's blue, not green.
It's blue and yellow, quarterly, ore and azure, a lion rampant counterchanged, and as far as I can tell, that's available. And
if you're anything like me, you look at that and go, "Oh, Swedish!"
But it doesn't conflict against Sweden.
No, it does not.
And honestly, this looks super heraldic to me. Just it doesn't have. You're not using secondary charges. You're not using. Not slapping a border on it. Not slapping a tertiary on it. Just simple heraldry in common categories. I took like 10 minutes to come up with each of these, maybe less. Constantia, yes, painting it could be fun. Animate charges aren't my cup of tea. I get other people to do my art for me. Let me look.
Oh, I got a wedding out of it.
Let me look up a thing that I was looking at earlier today.
Cormac does?
Yes, because you mentioned Purpure being rare, and I had a nagging little memory earlier that someone had done a survey of heraldry and looked at exactly that, what was common and what wasn't. And so I asked Cormac, because Cormac knows these things, and it turns out that he's the one that did it.
Hey, how about that?
Yes, from an armorial called the Daring Roll, Dering. which he did an analysis of. It is the earliest known extant English roll of arms from the 1270s. So it's not necessarily representative of later heraldry or anything of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
But the main takeaway for me on this is that out of 325 pieces of armory, there were 3 that used Vert and 1 that used Purpure. That was it. There were 15 instances of Vert.
So Ver, more common than Vert.
Yep.
At least in the daring roll.
At least in the daring roll. And I know that changes later period. It also depends on where you are. The Italians had lots of Vert.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
They
liked to use it for hills.
If anyone
that had trees growing out of them.
If anyone would like to do this sort of analysis on other rolls, Cormac would be happy to see that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I had a short conversation with him earlier, and he said that he had hoped that other people would do similar analyses, because I would be very interested to see, like, just this is a 13th century
color palette.
Color palette. I would love to see like a 14th century, a 15th century, and a 16th century, just English, and see how it changed.
Yeah, and then not to mention the
German, French, Italian.
Yeah. And I think it would be really interesting to have a look at. Are there any extant Islamic armorials?
I don't know. That would be awesome. Ooh, Iago says, Azure, a lion rampant Varian ghouls appears clear. Varian ghouls, that is. Appears clear. Nice.
It's very and ghouls.
Yes. Alec, I'll get you that blazon in a moment. That is that banner belongs to our other roommate, who is not here at the moment.
Yes, she is.
Oh, you came downstairs. That's okay. I'll look it up.
We look at the database for these things. We don't expect you to know it off the top of your head.
Azure, a sea griffin ore, and on a chief argent, 5 lozenges sable. And this is a pretty good example of artistic license. The banner with the words is not part of the device. And the sea griffin is technically ore, and has had some artistic license applied to it. And it also doesn't actually have a border, even though it looks like it has a border.
Yeah, that's just a frame.
Yep, it's clearly framed. Yep.
Yeah, it is a beautiful piece of artwork, but yes, artistic liberties have been taken.
Yes, it's a lovely piece of art, and judging by the snail down there, I presume that's Romolo, who does beautiful art in the West and other places, but he's in the West. Okay, so I think we are just about out of time. So last minute questions?
Do we have cookies?
The cookies are in the mail.
That's true! I'm getting cookies. Yay.
And it doesn't look like Rav actually showed up. So if anyone talks to him, tell him that there were cookies and he missed them.
Yep, there were cookies. Rav missed them. Oh, well.
And there was also a question from Jacques, and it doesn't look like Jacques on here either, who asked about heraldry for pets. And in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to say I discourage registering heraldry for pets.
If you have a badge already, you can stick it on your pet. But I wouldn't register separate badges for your pets.
If you have a badge that you think is really awesome that you want to register, you are entitled to register several pieces of armory. You can have multiple badges. I have multiple badges.
So do I.
If you want to use one of them for a pet, go right ahead. If you want to register one for a pet, okay, register it to yourself and then use it for the pet. Yeah, up to 6 pieces of armory, possibly more later. As Constantia says, the current limit is 6. One device, and the rest are badges. And the general rule is the badge says, "This is me," and the device says, "This is me," and the badge says, "This is mine," which is a pretty good thing to put on your pet, to say, "This is mine." Will Linden says, "Cats are people." Well, kind of.
Some of them certainly want us to believe that they are people.
If the cat can fill out the heraldry paperwork itself, then I will be very impressed. I will support the heraldic registration and also ask to meet the cat.
Yes. And whoever gave that cat opposable thumbs, shame on you.
Right? What do you think it is, a raccoon?
It's a polydactyl cat, obviously.
Even the polydactyl cats don't actually have opposable thumbs. They just have more toes.
All right. And on that note,
it's time.
I believe we are out of time. So thank you very much for joining us.
Bardic in half an hour. And that's it. So
Bye.
Bye.